Okay, so we are continuing Unit 10 of the Morinu units about Shmita. We are starting Unit number 10 for the Menucha of Surname Danger and Sir Moses Montefiore. And we've been learning the pasuk for a very long time, learning the same pasuk. Vayta Shabbat ha'aretz lachem le'ochla. Now, le'ochla means eating, and lachem means for your use and utilization, which means that you can't waste or ruin. And this leads to the question of define what is waste and ruin, and define what are you not allowed to waste or ruin. All right. So part of the problem we're going to have in this unit is that the Mishnayot and Braitot regarding Perot Shvi'it, very, very few of the Mishnayot and Braitot about Shvi'it actually mention what parts of the fruit you need, how much you need to utilize the fruit. Where do we find more Mishnayot and Braitot about what are you allowed to use, what are you not allowed to use? What are you allowed to waste, what are you not allowed to waste? So let's take a step back before I go into that and say, what are we talking about? Do you eat potato peels? Yes. Okay. So if I peel a potato for my chalent, do you peel your potatoes before you put them in your chalent? Okay. So now you have potato peels. Will you eat those peels? No. You just said you do eat potato peels. Meaning you'd eat them in other context, not in this context. All right. But regardless of context, when they picked this potato, it had shachvit, the whole thing, including the peel, because you eat it in other context, right? So when I peel what? No real reason to assume otherwise. All right. The Pashtut is yes. The Pashtut is yes. We actually saw that Gemara at the beginning of Unit 9. So the Gemara said that if you pick it for proper use, then it's has Geshashvi. So when you so objectively, this potato is a holy potato. Now, including the peel, and also including that sliver that's between the peel, that's stuck to the peel, right? All right. Same goes now. In a way, what's a worse example? What about cucumber peels? Cucumber peels are very prevalently eaten, even more than potato peels, right? Elamai, you make a certain kind of salad that doesn't really work with a peel. What do you do then? Right? All right. What about pits? What is about pits?
It's not normally.
So pits should be easier because they're not normally eaten, right? Now, but what about the apple core?
Not normally.
So here we'll have to differentiate between a few things. First of all, when you say it, what is it? Right? What is the core? How deeply into the core do I need to continue eating and justifiably say, well, no one eats past this? So that's one question. The other question is, even if, let's say, there is a convention. So let's say it's conventional, 2.5 centimeters out of the pits, no one eats. So let's say. All right. But is there any difference between the flesh of the apple right in its outer layer and the flesh of the apple right before the pit? So the flesh is the same flesh, right? You see what I'm saying? It's the same thing, right? It's the same fruit, right? It's the same DNA, it's the same everything. What? The same consistency, it's the same everything. Elamai, it's hard to eat it, so no one bothers, right? Even worse is prunes. Prunes? Not prunes. What? Plums. What? No, you don't. No, so I'll explain. When you have the pit, a plum pit, right, you can suck on it for hours. You can suck on it for hours and and you'll never get all the sugar out of there. Right? All right. Let me know how that goes. But right, so what about that? Now, no one sucks it for hours, and I mean, whatever kids do, but kids, you know what I'm saying? That's definitely not considered derech achila to go on sucking the plum. On the other hand, in terms of the sugars that you have stuck to the pit or the whatever flesh, whatever you have stuck there, right? There's no real difference between that and the flesh of the rest of the fruit, right? So if you have the pit itself, l'chora, the pit itself isn't edible, right? That's not a question. But what about that flesh? Now that's different, of course, from the potato question, right? The potato question, how many potato peels are actually eaten? Probably 30%. No? You think more? But you say, my point is, no, besides my point, I'm saying 30, right? To say, even if it's 30, I mean, it's quite prevalent on the one hand. On the other hand, it's not a negligible percentage, right? All right. So all these questions, those are the questions we want to answer. Now, the Gemara, the Mishnah and the Braitot, in the Shmita context, don't really discuss this much. It's discussed more in the context of Masrot. And then we have a Tosefta. Let's have a look at the Tosefta. First Tosefta on the page. Chomer b'shviit shein b'maser sheni. So shviit is more chamur. What? How's that? Hashviit asabet hamufkar keshamur, ufsolot ochalin keochalin, ואוכלי אדם כאוכלי בהמה, וכלפי גוזים וכלפי רימונים כיוצא בהם. בשאין כן במעשר שני. So why is shviit more chamur than Maser Shani? Because the psolet of the Shvi'it fruit is as kadosh, psolet ochalin keochalin, is as kadosh as the fruit itself. The psolet is like the fruit. Now, you might say, maybe psolet means like the apple core, right? The same flesh, right? It's the same flesh, but it's different. But then, the writer goes on to say, Kepler gozim kepler rimonim. Klipe gozim, klipe rimonim. No one eats klipe gozim, not shells. No one eats not shells. That's right. What's in the goz? No, that. So you can propose different shot, but presumably it's a nutshell. In a nutshell, I'd say it's a nutshell.
Is different to potato.
Why?
When you peel it, you always get good. There's always a bit of good potato.
Right.
There isn't a clear lot.
Right.
Ah,
which means what? Which means that this Mishnah this Tosefta is saying the worst thing. It was everything I said was saying that I was trying to convince you that potato peels are edible and the plum and the plum pit, etc. But then I go to the Tosefta and I say, oh, by the way, nut shells are also kadosh, meaning everything of the fruit of the Shemitah fruit is kadosh. That's what it sounds like, right? So it's worse than masrot. So you can't really learn from masrot because masrot will only tell you the things that are edible. When it comes to Shemitah, also things that are inedible are still kadosh. That's what the Braita seems to say. You have a Mishnah that says the same. Klipe rimon, the Mishnah Shvit Zayin Gimel. Klipe rimon vehanetz shelo klipe gozim begalinim yeshlem shvit v'lidmen shvit. So both the pits and the shells all have shvit. So the whole thing. Let's see the Rambam. Klipe rimon vehanetz shelo klipe gozim v'agarinim yeshlem shvit v'lidmen shvit. Afalim nem biur v'lidmen. So why not biur? We're not going to go into it right now, but they have kedushat shvit. You can't throw them in the garbage. Chora. Now, why is this? So says Mari Kurkus. Grinei shal perot kamar beruyin lahasaka yeshlem shvit kivan shikar pri ruyin lema'achal adam. Kedushat shvit gam al klipim ve'garinim. So I want to take another step beyond the Mari Kurkus because I think it is what he means, and I'll say the following. Mari Kurkus is saying like this: when I pick a nut. Now, because I picked it. For Kedushat Shvit, as we mentioned before, the whole thing, this whole thing is Kadosh Kedushat Shvit. So now, I crack the nut. I take the shell aside. Is the shell still holy? It is, but why? Because it could be used for other uses. If it had no other use, it has no other use. Okay. There's like this. Why is so hasaka? I'll get to that in one second. When we talk about masrot, only things that are edible are kadosh when it comes to masrot. Things that are inedible are not. Comes to Shmita, we have another thing which we've been learning about for a couple of months now, about Unit 9, right? But lachem lo'ochla, right? I'm joking. But lachem lo'ochla, right? That other uses also justify Kedushat Shvita, but Rafi points out, wait, but hasaka, Hasaka, we said, is not a good enough reason to justify kedusha, right? Otherwise, everything is kadosh, right? Because you could burn anything. I think the Mari Kukos is saying like this. He's saying, when I cut a tree branch, all right, so this is going to be used for hasaka that is no kedusha. All right, I pick a nut. The nut, the entire thing is kadosh. Now, what about the shell? The shell you could use for lachem. Now, had I picked just the shell, which is only used for hasaka, that would not have kedusha. But because I picked something that is kadosh, mimela, the whole thing is kadosh, if it has the use. So, a bit complicated. You feel like we're back in unit 9, right? A bit complicated, but that's the idea. The idea is, since it's coming with the fruit, I consider it part of the fruit. It has no use. It does have a use for hasaka. That's the uni structure. That's the Mari Kukos is saying. Correct. Because the fruit doesn't lose kedusha afterwards, but only if it could be used. Right, exactly. That's correct. I agree. When there will be pits that you can't really use for hasaka. I don't know if it's normal. So I'm not sure if the point is I'm not sure if the point is that it's normal enough, or that I don't know if the point is that it's normal enough or that it can be used. You're saying anything could be used. Who said who told you there's a difference? So you haven't tried burning either one. You should try. Let me know how it goes next week. Regular branches don't have kedusha. Why? Because they're not. What's the word for nispach? They're not. Right. Exactly.
I was thinking, Rabbi Tzalel.
Right. Just a second, Nathan. It's because it's like this. Because they're nispach to the fruit, right? Yeah. What? Yeah, but batel is the proper English word. Yeah, no, but it's like because they come together. I'm trying to think of a good word. What? No. God, you don't have to go into politics all the time. I understand what you're saying. What? Right. Okay. It's included as part of the fruit, and it has to fit those two. In other words, like this: anything that has the true lachem leochla has kedusha. Fruit has kedusha. Whatever's edible has kedusha. Whatever could be used for all the uses we mentioned last time, right? Of lighting candles and that, all that has kedusha. Fine. Those things that have, right, the things that don't fit into that category, but are the things that are usable and are part of the fruit, right? Those things do. They fit the two definitions. That's what the Mari Kukos is doing. But Yonatan wants to ask something. Go ahead, Yonatan.
No, I was thinking that it might have to do with economic worth, but you just answered that. There's like several categories in the end of Unit 9 that if it fits one of those, like lighting candles.
So Mari Kukos wants to say something broader. He wants to say, even if it doesn't fit the proper definitions, even if it wouldn't fit the definitions of Unit 9, because it's maybe ancillary, a good word, appended,
Adjunct.
All right, thank you. No, appended maybe, or ancillary. Mashu kazeh. Well, right? All right, but so included as part of the fruit.
That would be a very big finish. It would be easier just to say because it's part of the thing at the end of it.
You think, why do you need the second aspect? No, so I think the Mari Kukos is doing like this. He's saying like this: when I pick a maaser nut, I have a whole bunch of nuts, and I take the masrot. Right now, the masrot. What if the masrot has kedusha? Only the edible part. When it comes to shvi'it, right, as opposed to shvi'it, that also the inedible part has kedusha. Why? Because shvi'it has this concept of relating kedusha to things that aren't edible. it's only because they're useful. Well, these are useful too. It doesn't fit the normal categories. Doesn't matter. Doesn't need to fit the normal categories because the only reason I'm thinking about this is because they're adjunct, whatever, to the fruit. So there, it's you see you said the lumdish structure here.
In what you said between mice and this, but you're going to give it to the Kohen. So you're not going to give him pieces of.
Oh no, I'm going to give him 30 nuts with your shells. What's he going to do with them? He's allowed to do whatever he wants with them. He's not allowed to do whatever he wants with them. He's not allowed to play ball with the nuts and use them for a sakah. He has to eat them. He's not allowed. It's chilul hakodesh. He has to eat them b'tahara, right? Right, but it's a fool. The shells he's allowed to throw in the garbage. That's a chidush. You're not allowed to throw the Shmita shells in the garbage. But you see what I'm saying? For food, right? Correct. As opposed to Shmita.
Just from the word vel, the union of Shmita is if there's an union of what's called kedusha on food. Why would I break up the food? This is the thing. It's called kedusha. Okay. I eat what I can eat, and the rest of it remains kadosh.
Why should it remain kadosh? Hashem is letting me eat. Why can't they just throw out?
I see that as a chiddush that it doesn't remain kadosh.
Interesting. Okay, I hear. I'm just saying, had it not been, my point is simply that had it not been for Unit 9, I think it wouldn't be as intuitive as you think. In other words, it won't work, right? Correct. So it is that middle ground, right, where you say, I'll tell you what I think. I think the point is this. Here's I'll tell you what I propose. I propose the following. When I give the Kohen the nuts, are they kadosh? They and their shells? I think the answer is yes. He cracks the nut. Now he has the nuts and the shells. Are the shells kadosh? Not anymore because they're not edible. And truma is only given for food.
Why do you think they will and get?
I'll explain. It only helps the next part. When I pick the nut, just like with the truma, with the maser or whatever, it has to be touch meat. The whole thing. I crack the nut, right? The whole thing is kadosh because it's kadosh. So I crack the nut. Now I have the nuts and the shells. The nuts are kadosh, of course. What are the shells? Well, they had kedusha. What took away their kedusha? The fact they're inedible. Wait, that's not so simple. Just because it's inedible doesn't mean it's not kadosh. In other words, I need to justify that it no longer fits any rubric of since they first. I'll explain what I'm doing. I always want to take a step back. When it comes to flowers, the question is: were the flowers ever kadosh? Right? There's a question: were the flowers ever kadosh? Right? The answer is no. Now, what about this nut shell? It was kadosh, and there's no justification to take away the kedusha because it could still be used. So, I think that's what you're saying. I'm just making what I'm saying a bit more feasible in your paradigm. You just still disagree.
But since it's counterintuitive, because used for the same thing that it wouldn't be kadosh if it was used for that.
No, I understand the problem. Yeah. Right, but because it started off with kedusha, that's the difference. The difference is all those things in Unit 9. The question is, are you kadosh at all? Here, the question is, do I remove the kedusha by removing the fruit, the food element from the other? See the difference? It's like the muchzak and the motzi. That's because we're dayanim. That's what we think about all the time. That's right. I agree.
Well,
Why would you make a difference between one?
we need to get to the bottom of this. We don't do it like this.
Step by step. So that's the machlok Mary Krokus, and that what I'm trying to do is the following. I want to say.
From the beginning, the shake doesn't fit the shake. No, I will never eat it. Even if it's connected, but still it's something different.
So
Kedusha of Mass and Kedusha of Shvit is different thing.
in what sense?
Because Mass is in the Shvit has nothing to do with
Bezma. Mr. Gamor, but what's the?
Category. We're trying to set up the Kedusha.
But the Tosefta is comparing the two, and the question is how far do you go comparing the two? That's the question.
Concept. Truma is an union of highly food per se. Not highly food in the way that we understand.
Right, it's definitely not the same concept as, for sure. Yeah.
So I'm saying that Mahavamina is not necessarily that, that there's any particular thing that has to be the same. So this guy's can be that he has to eat it, so that's the holiness part of it, is that the eating part of it.
Right.
Right? Whereas the holiness of the fruit is that it's a different thing. So I would think that the nut is holy, and the klipa is holy. There's no reason not to and be eating it. Right? So you can, like any other thing, there's a physical limit of how much you can do.
I hear.
And then the rest of the time, to think that
it wouldn't be. I hear. The question about is how to read the Mari Korkus, because I think you're reading the Mari Korkus as once I've defined this thing as holy, so Mimela it remains holy. That's the produce Hashem is giving me, right? The produce Hashem gives me, and all its ancillary or adjunct or however you want to call it, right? Or the appended, the chulei, right? Whatever it is, right? All has that kedusha, and now figure out how to either use it or put it in the Shmita bin, fine, whatever. Figure that out. That's the Mari Korkus. I want to propose something that makes it much closer to the Radvaz, because what's going to happen now is this. In my proposal, at least, the Radvaz is going to say, we're not talking about any pits or any shells. We're talking about specific shells that could be used for other uses that do fit the rubrics of Unit 9. Do fit the rubrics of Unit 9. No, not a saka. Not a saka. See the Radvaz for a moment. Hatam she'emorim letzvi'ah. Beit came down to klipe gozim aynu klipa chitzona she'ruya letzvi'ah. Klipa pnimit hakashara hi kmo etzim. Meaning, when you talk about the pits and the peels of what?
That's why.
I know that's what you said before, but he said before. He Radvaz said before you. What? No, but he's disagreeing with Mari Korkus. Mari Korkus. What's the difference between the Mari Korkus and the Radvaz? The Radvaz says when we. If it's a Radvaz is saying this, why is the question is this? The Tosefta says that the Shmita fruit is more chamur than the Maser fruit. Why? Why is Shmita fruit more chamur than Maser fruit? So no, so the Radvaz says because of Unit 9, because Maser is given only for food, and Shmita you have lachem lochla, you have a whole. So if they exist in the fruit or the pits or whatever, so they exist, and if they don't, they don't. The Mari Korkus disagrees. Mari Korkus says even though it doesn't fit the rubrics of Unit 9, they'll still be kadosh. Now I'm arguing why, because they do have a use. You're saying that Mari Korkus, I guess, let's say theoretically 3 ways of reading the Rambam. Why are you more machmir with Perot Shvi'it than with Klipei Shvi'it than with Klipei Maser? Right. One option is to say, once that Maser Shvi'it by its nature is Hashem is giving you all of this produce. So whatever you pick, the entire thing is kadosh nekuda. As long as when you pick, right? That's what I mean by picking. You are right. They say, what happens if I chop the whole branch off with a whole bunch of fruits, right? What about tomatoes, right? If I take them on the vine, right? So the vine itself is also kadosh.
I'm sorry. Is there a way to look at it and say, look, the pit itself has the ability to to become something new, and then it's inherently, holy in the fact that it can grow into something different, but a banana peel would not be.
A banana peel would not be why.
Because a banana peel
Bananas-
has, nobody eats a banana peel. It has, there's no, once you've removed the banana, the banana is
It's never
treated
used
as
for anything
shmita.
else. Right. So I think there are three. I was like this. There are two ways of reading the Mari Korkos. Right. So like this. There's the Dr. Berlowitz way. They would say that banana peels are also kadosh because you pick a banana like that. So banana peel is kadosh because that's the produce Hashem gave you, and that's the nature of the Shmita, and that's why everything that's appended, everything is connected, that's adjunct to the fruit. I feel like we're having a thesaurus. Anyway, they're all kadosh, right? That's one way of reading it. I think the Mari Korkos means a bit differently, and the Mari Korkos means that since it's appended to the fruit and has any use, even not the proper Unit 9 uses, it has kedusha. And the Radvaz says none of that. The Radvaz says you simply need to read Unit 9. Masrot, Tumat Masrot are given for eating, and Shvit is given lachem lochla, and whatever, and therefore you're going to have many things that you can paint with, that you could use for soaps, that you could for. But they're going to have to ask, do they have that Shvit, as we discussed at great length in Unit 9, and then that's a difference. That's the difference in Masrot and then Shvit. There's no other difference. So Radvaz says there's no real chidush in this Rambam or this Braita. There's no real difference. There's no real chidush. It's everything we've learned. All we said is, remember how in Unit 8 we talked about Le'ochla, which applies to both Shvit and Masrot. Then remember Unit 9 where you learned Le'ochla, which applies to Shvit and not to Masrot. So there's nafkamina between Shvit and Masrot. Unit 9 applies to Shvit, it doesn't apply to Masrot. That's it. That's the whole story. That's a Radvaz. Mari Korkos, as we argued before, is broadening that more, and that has, of course, tremendous detrimental nafkaminot if you follow the Mari Korkos, right? Because it means you have to keep the banana peels, you have to keep the pits, you have to pick, right, etc. Right? Now, also when you talk about the klipei rimonim are infamous. We know very well what. Have you visited your kids with like Ba'oma? There's a use. What?
What do they use it for?
If they'd have a banana peel, I'm sure they'd throw it into the fire. That's my point. And it would be very useful. What? Melech. I don't know. No, so that's the problem. Once you say that, so you could go almost anywhere. I don't know. No, so I said before, it could be that people used to put the eggshells, the nutshells. Used to put that you no. So I'm not sure if when he says throwing the oh, do they the nuts? All right, so maybe so that's the thing. I said I'm not sure if Mari Korkos means anything that's flammable could be used on your flames. All right. Right? Is that what the Mari Korkos means, or does Mari Korkos mean specifically people used to throw nutshells into the fire? That was like a common enough use to discuss. I'm not sure which one he means, but that'd be enough. Banana peels, I don't know. Maybe banana peels also give a good sight. I don't know. I haven't tried. Right now, but the important thing is the important difference between Mari Korkos and Radvaz. Either way, regardless of our argument about Mari Korkos, Radvaz just says. The difference is that Unit 8 applies to both, and Unit 9 applies only to Shvit, not to Masrot. That's it. And that's our advice. Mari Korkos says no. Anything that's appended to the fruit and is useful, or how useful? So we can argue, but right has any kind of use, will have kedusha. In which case, everything you buy in the store that's appended to the fruit, you're gonna have to put in the Shmita bin or whatever. We haven't figured out what you do with it yet. I'm just saying there is kedusha. And that's going to be a pain in the neck, right? So we're not going to want to follow the Mari Korkos. That's for sure, right? All right. Let's so that's the first aspect of this.